Yeah, welcome to Nigeria Today, a current affairs program where we discuss critically issues in the polity as it happens. Right now, we are in a political era, and of course, we are going to be looking at some topical political issues, and of course, some other general issues as they appear in the Nigerian polity today. Welcome once again. My name is Charles Ibe. And with me on this discussion segment, I have a seasoned politician, a young one for that matter, and he is the flag bearer of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, running for the House of Representatives for Amak Buhari constituency by the name of Omagbise Baro. Mr. Baro, you're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much, Charles.
All right, let's take a look at some issues in the polity right now. It was in the news today, the issue of labor. After a meeting of the Governors Forum, the governors came out critically to say 30,000 naira is a no-go. They cannot afford to pay 30,000 naira. Governor Yari actually went ahead to say if the states are going to pay 30,000, then labor should expect massive labor cuts, as in there will be loss of jobs and all of that. And also that some states, if they should attempt to pay 30,000 naira, might end up bankrupt. What do you make of all of this situation?
Well, I have said this consistently over the years, and I haven't changed my position, that nobody ever talks about some of the perks that are paid to some of these high office holders. Nobody talks about the perks and the allowances paid to political appointees and politically exposed people. There are long retinues of convoys of cars and their aides. Nobody ever hears about the senior special assistants to governors being owed salaries. So the question is, are we really recognizing the dignity of the ordinary Nigerian person, or are we pandering to the whims and caprices of the elites in our society? My take is very simple, that we can afford to pay even much more if our country is organized better, if our leaders are thoughtful, if they understand the imperative of the common good, and if they pay attention to the common man, and if we deal with corruption, and fight corruption the way we should. We do have the abundant resources in Nigeria to take care of every Nigerian. If we can organize ourselves well, pay attention to the common man and the common good, and fight corruption massively in our country, we can afford to pay even much more. And the governors and all the high-ranking political officials in our country should be honest and truthful about the way they have mismanaged the resources of our country, rather than trying to hold the poor workers of Nigeria hostage in this situation.
Now, the key word I got there from you said, if we can manage to pay, or if we can organize to pay.
Exactly.
And now the governors who are actually in the saddle right now are telling us that organization or not, they cannot be able to do this.
It's a simple question, Charles. It's simply a question of the quality of people who we have leading our country. So if you do not have people who are innovative, who can push the frontiers of creativity, who can ensure that their states are viable and that their states are that their states work and function properly. The challenge is that if you are the chief executive of any enterprise, including a government institution or even a state, your focus should be how to grow the revenue, to expand the GDP of that state or that society. My take is this: I think that we have a mentality where a lot of our states, the truth be told, are just sitting down waiting for federal revenue to be shared, waiting for VAT to be shared, waiting for excess crude to be shared. And there is very little innovation and enterprise going on in most of our states. It is no surprise that they are saying this. That's my take. So when I say organize our society better, organizing includes getting the right quality of people at the helm of affairs, so that quality of people with the right thinking, with the right innovation, can deliver our society to where it should be.
That is putting square pegs in square holes.
Spot on, Charles.
Now, the governor, aside from the governors, this has been on the front burner for a while.
Yes.
The issue, and you actually mentioned it, viability of most states in Nigeria.
Yes.
He actually mentioned that aside from Lagos State,
Yeah.
some states might not or cannot be able to, categorically put, cannot be able to afford to pay.
And I think that the
30,000
difference
naira.
between Lagos State and every other state is not about a natural endowment, it's not about a historical antecedent. I mean, some of those things are there, but I think the real issue is about the creativity. Look, at the end of the day, all of us are born into different circumstances. Are you saying, therefore, that because somebody is born into a poor family, that the person will remain poor forever? What have you done in that state of poverty to help yourself, to push yourself out of it? What ideas have you brought to the table? What have you innovated? What have you implemented? The truth is that we have been saying this, like you have said, for many years. But the issues of the viability of states, of most states, has not been addressed. And the reason is not because the states are not viable. What is viability? Don't they have arable land? Don't they have human beings there? Don't they have schools? Haven't the people been educated? So what is it that makes them so unviable? The only thing that makes states unviable in Nigeria is poor quality leadership. So anybody who tells me that a state is not viable, what they are saying is that the leaders of those states from time immemorial to date have failed them. That is my take.
All right. Now, there's also this school of thought that perhaps over time, managements of states across boards have gotten used to this food is ready syndrome of
And
come to
that's
Abuja and share
the
all of that.
the
And also
accounts.
in line with that, also in line with viability and all of that, is this call for restructuring of Nigeria. If the bulk is now shifted back to the governors, okay, you go ahead, make your state produce, and then submit to the center, instead of the center being the one disbursing to the states. They come to Abuja and share revenue and all of that. Also had made a lot of them to put their thinking cap under their pillows. Now, what would be your take right now on the issue of restructuring? Because it's actually one of the political points of
front burner issues.
Yes.
There's no doubt about the fact that there is restructuring required in Nigeria, politically, socially, and economically. But before we get to this reconfiguration, politically, socially, economically, I always say, and I will say it on your program, that have we paid attention to the renewal and the restructuring of our hearts and our minds? Because you see, there are many fundamental questions that need to be dealt with in Nigeria. In other countries who have gone through similar histories as we have, whether it is the history of militarism, the history of colonialism, even the history of, of corruption that we have gone through, even the history of the civil war that we fought. A lot of these histories, here's what we have done wrong in Nigeria. We have swept them under the carpet. We have created big elephants in the parlor. And you know, when you have an elephant in the parlor, what are you doing? You're trying to watch television. Instead of you to remove the elephant, our people are trying to look around the elephant and see how we can still manage to watch the television without while the elephant is there. Here's my point, the point I'm making. There are some national issues that need to be dealt with that have to do with the mindset of Nigerians. And I have spoken about those things, whether it is our colonial history, even our slave history, all the way to our military history, all the way to the Civil War, and then all the acts of misgovernance and corruption that we have had. Until we bring those issues to the front burner and we deal with them in a very deliberate and systematic manner. Here's what I think. Every attempt to reconfigure Nigeria, i.e. restructuring, will always fall short of our expectations. That is, one group is going to say, no, this does not favor us. There is too much mutual suspicion in our country. We haven't dealt with the issues of mutual suspicion that have to do with our historical legacies. So there are a lot of legacy issues that need to be dealt with. We haven't dealt with them, and we are all talking about restructuring. Each time there's a new calculation, a new formula, there's going to be a problem. But one final take on restructuring is that there are laws in Nigeria. There are many laws in Nigeria that need to change. For example, look at what happened with the Not Too Young to Run bill. Just as an example, that in itself is a major restructuring of the political configuration of Nigeria. So when we talk about restructuring, let's not be too quick. Let's not forget that there are basic laws. There's a law of federal character, isn't it?
Yes.
That law can be changed. So restructuring sometimes sounds like a very big, huge matter. But if you take it one law at a time, one issue at a time, maybe we can get to the promised land.
All right. Let's do a little bit take on the labor issue again. Let's look critically at the issue of the wage bill
Yes.
of the state, and also looking at the civil service actually. Don't you think the service is overlabored with a lot of people actually doing nothing or doing little to contribute to the coffers of the states, which is gives rise to the issue of saying we cannot be able to pay. If these people are productively engaged and employed, our recruitment process and the checks on productivity.
Good. So, and you are spot on. So, two issues for me. One, there is too much emphasis in a country of 190 million people. How many people work in the public service? Let's even start from there. So my point is this: why must everybody be looking at the public service? Why is government the center of everything we do? So we have to have a deliberate attempt to de-government Nigeria. That is, to de-emphasize government. How about private enterprise? So when I hear people talking about minimum wage, please, I hope we understand that most of the people who work in Nigeria do not work for the government. That is, there are 190 million people in Nigeria. Let's say that 80 million of them are adults who work. How many people work in the public service? The actual majority of the people. So when I hear governors saying that they cannot pay minimum wage, how about me that is a chief executive of a company, that is a proprietor of a school? Doesn't the minimum wage affect me? Why is everybody talking about the ability of government to pay? Then that brings us to your other question, or the other side of your question, which is very simply, whose fault is it that a civil servant gets to work, that people leave my organization, tell me they are going to work in public service? I ask them why. They say, it's easier there, that I will close early, I will come to work late, and I will close early, and I can go and do anything I want. Whose fault is that? Is it not the political leaders who themselves go to work late, who condone the mediocrity that is in the public service, who lead by example? I mean, for God's sake, if a chief executive of a government agency is at work like I am every day at 7:15 in the morning, who born you not to come to work on time? The problem is leadership is example. The problem with our society is poor quality of leadership. Charles, it comes back to the same thing, that we've got the wrong set of people leading ours or ruling our society, because they are not leading. If they were leading, they will be providing the right example. And it is because of that we have a civil service that seems over-bloated, that is definitely underproductive, and requires a lot of renewal. So I think that with the right leadership, we can get the right energy, key performance indicators, targets set for people. Look, if you set fire under someone's bomb, the person will rise to the occasion. The problem is that rather than setting fire under the bomb of public servants, the leaders, the so-called leaders, are actually condoning and exemplifying the mediocrity that our public service has become.
All right, thank you very much. My guest, Omar Bishe Barrow, a chieftain of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, he is of the view that Nigeria needs serious re-engineering. The problem with Nigeria, as it is, might not really be the people. It might stem from leadership, quality of leadership, and a whole lot that goes around leadership. And also the labor issue, productivity. The right leadership put in the right places, productivity of the people will go a long way in turning the country around. We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at some political issues on Nigeria today.
The question of leadership is a factor in this regard to the success of the fight against the Boko Haram terrorists. And then you look at also the factor of morale.
You're welcome back. The program is still Nigerian Today. And now we are going to be looking at politics. This is the issue, the order of the day right now. 2019 general elections. Now let's start from this point of view. We have 98 or thereabout 80-something political parties and counting. But before now, even as it is currently, it appears Nigeria has always been tending towards a two-party system. Despite the clarion call for more opening the political space and all of that, parties registration and all of that. But at the end of the day, it boils down between one or two big parties that tends to overshadow and tends to take dominance at the center stage. Now, opposition parties, opposition politics in Nigeria, has it really been up to speed? Why do we always have to talk about just two parties why we have about 80-something parties and counting?
Well, it's a very interesting question, a question I often have to respond to. In fact, I responded to that same question earlier today. People talk about the fact that certain parties are popular. I say, what are they popular for? I prefer the word notorious. Because let's call a spade a spade. We've had a few dominant parties in the last 19 years in Nigeria. Some of them have morphed together to form one strong party, one of the big parties. My question is this: aren't Nigerians, isn't it clear that what we really need are alternatives? That, let the truth be said, these large establishment parties have had every opportunity at local, state, and federal level, have had every single political office that is available. They have tasted it. And the problem with Nigeria continues to persist. I think that is an indication of the need for an alternative. However, to speak directly to your question, I think that it is the quality of the organization that the alternatives have put together. And it is very important. You see, if you want to really renew a society, if you want to do things differently, then you must really organize yourself in a different manner. So you cannot come in, for example, and I'll give you two things. You cannot come in as a new politician and say you are joining one of the establishment parties that is notorious for some of the wrong things with our country, and yet you want to go in and do those same things that have made them notorious. Then you are not doing anything different. Ditto for political parties who are also coming onto the stage and doing exactly the same things. Some of these parties, with due respect, are just lackeys of some of the bigger political parties. They do not have clear ideologies. All they are really interested in is taking the rejects of the big political parties, absorbing them, and hoping that they would use it to create some fame for themselves. However, some of us are serious. And in being serious, it's about organizing ourselves, ensuring that we can create the right structures, have the right platforms, mobilize appropriately, and most importantly, to sell an ideology that is refreshing, that is renewing, and that will really change the face of Nigeria. If we are able to do that, and that, Charles, is a journey that I have taken up, that if we are able to do that, then we can make a small dent. But guess what? That small dent will start to break, and it will start to become a big hole. And before you know it, we will also have a foothold into the future of Nigerian politics.
Issue. Now, while we are talking, one thing keeps repeating in my mind, keeps coming back to me, like, at the center of all of this is the electorate, the people. You say a party is popular with who? The people, popular with the electorate. And then there's, we're forced to wonder, why are they popular with the electorate? Okay, like you said, aggregation of people who might not really have ideologies and all of that to sell to the people. But at the end of the day, they still get to the people, they get themselves elected, and they also continue to be in a race, even when the output has not really been favorable to the generality of Nigerians. Now, 2019 has presented an opportunity to do things right or to do things differently. Your party, Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, what are you doing currently? And also what are you proposing to do to ensure that this electorate, who actually are the key in 2019 general elections, that they get the reorientation that is required?
So and you're spot on. I think that people need education, they need reorientation, And that is one of the things that my campaign and our party and our candidacy has been focused on. We have produced a number of educational tracts, even educating people as basic as what does a good politician look like. We have translated this in local languages here in Abuja, in Koro, in Gwandara, in Gbagi, in Hausa, in Tiv, in Igala, in Yoruba, in Igbo, in Pidgin. And we have even translated this into audios. And we are taking it everywhere we go, because we believe that the education, the renewal of people's hearts and minds is the beginning of the type of difference that we want to make. So we are investing heavily in this area. We are saying to people that, and I'll tell you something, the problem at elections, especially at my own level, if I may be selfish to talk about it, is that what happens is that the quality of candidates is so poor. I have been to so many places recently where in the satellite towns and in the rural areas in Abuja, where people have told me that, do you know that even the candidates of these big parties, they never even show up. They just send people with the rice and the beans and the Maggi. This is the level of politics that we have played. Many people say, I ask people, why didn't you vote at the House of Reps election in 2015? It's the same day as the presidential election. Guess what they tell me? They say, oh, the quality of candidates was so poor. The candidates didn't even make an effort to make themselves known. Why should I waste my vote? So 500,000 people voted for president, but only 150,000 people voted for House of Reps. I don't know if you see the point. So I think the real problem goes back to what I've been saying since we started. The quality of people participating in the political process. The supply side of politics. That is what I'm saying. The number of people who actually put themselves out as candidates. Because everybody says politics is dirty, politics is for thugs. So everybody expects that it is dirty people and thugs that are involved in politics. We at ANRP, at the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, are bringing out forward-thinking candidates like myself, candidates like the people running for president, people running for Senate in Abuja, who are quality people, so that the Nigerian people will see that things can be done differently, and we can have good, credible people who are ready to take the bull by the horns and get involved in politics and governance.
So, in your interaction with people, obviously a grassroots person,
yes,
would you say categorically that Nigerian electorates right now are prepared for the 2019 elections? Do they have the required information? Are they motivated enough? I'm not talking about the stomach infrastructure motivation and all that. Are they really to be able to discern, okay, Mr. A said this or Mr. and actually take them to charge on what they say?
Let me tell you the honest truth. Where we are today, from all the work we have done, we are far from promised land. Even the educated elites, even the people who wear ties like you and who sit in their houses in Asokoro and in Maitama, are not politically astute. People have asked me, for example, they didn't even know that. People ask me, oh, as a legislator, are you going to build roads? These are educated people. They don't even know that the legislator's job is not to build roads. So there is so much that Nigerians don't know. People ask me questions like, does my vote count? I say to them, if your vote doesn't count, why will politicians be giving you money for it? Why would somebody call people in Ekiti State and so on and be giving them 2,000, 4,000 naira? Why? It is because your vote counts.
Let's look at another key stakeholder in elections in Nigeria, talking about the umpire.
Yes.
The INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission. Over years, they have performed. And in the last few months, they've actually had what people have said litmus tests that will serve as pointers to how they will perform in 2019. Talk about Ekiti, talk about Ondo,
yes.
Talk about Osun.
Yes.
Would you say, and then also talk about the just concluded primaries across board, which they are supposed to supervise and all of that. Would you categorically say that INEC would deliver free and fair elections come 2019?
Well, here's my take. Every institution in Nigeria is made up of Nigerians, and so is INEC. The truth, the generality of Nigerians, and I'll be very honest, are people who are always trying to game a system, unfortunately. So there are good people in INEC, but there are also many people in INEC, like in every Nigerian institution, including yours. They would, I think, for example, think about political parties. Political parties are organizing, and if some of them have bad people, like I said, and those bad people are planning violence or are planning to disrupt or to use vote buying, how about our security and intelligence services? Shouldn't they be infiltrating these parties? Shouldn't they even be infiltrating INEC?
Intelligence,
Intelligence,
conducting
clandestine intelligence activities. So that, because you see, like I said, no institution is perfect. Anywhere you have human beings, not only in Nigeria, everywhere in the world, you are going to see bad eggs who are going to try to undermine the credibility of that institution. So my take on INEC is this. INEC is a Nigerian human institution. It has good, it has bad. However, if we put in the right checks and balances, especially using the security, intelligence, and clandestine operations of our security agencies, I think we can identify those bad eggs in INEC. We can root them out of INEC, root them out of the political parties, name them, shame them ahead of the elections, so that Nigerians can see a commitment to really have free, fair, and credible elections.
All right, still on INEC. How much role do you think INEC is supposed to have played? Is it in education? Is it in advocacy? All of that. How would you say they did well enough in their role of supervisory role during this?
Interestingly, I come from a professional background. I'm a chartered accountant, and I worked in the banking and pension industries as well as in asset management that is highly regulated. I think that beyond being an umpire for elections, we need to either increase the powers of INEC or INEC has to focus more on the regulation of parties. What happens in a party? How do they raise money? How do they spend money? You see, and I mentioned banking, asset management, and because in those industries, the central bank, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the National Pension Commission regulates. They ask questions. They ask for the minutes of your meetings, your board extracts. How is your corporate governance? These are questions that INEC must ask. If it is not INEC that has the power to do so, then a body must be set up that will interrogate the internal workings of Nigerian political parties, because you have said it correctly. Internal party democracy is the core of democracy. Because at the end of the day, you mentioned something earlier. You said no matter what happens, people are left with few choices. The reason is because the internal democracy gives us the devil and the deep blue sea. We have no choice. We have to vote. So the hard work that has to be done is that the quality of the parties, the structure of our parties, the governance of our parties needs to be interrogated, and somebody has to regulate them. I know that there are issues. Anybody watching now will say, but there is freedom of political association. To what extent can you decide what happens? Here's what you can do. You have guidelines. INEC issues guidelines. Guidelines for how parties raise money. Guidelines for how parties spend money. These are guidelines that subsist till today. My question is, to what extent are those guidelines being monitored? Is there M&E? And what's the level and the quality of that M&E? Because if you think about the banking industry, you see what NDIC does. Yes. You see what central bank does. If you think about the pension industry, you see what PENCOM does. Do we see that type of role in INEC, or is it just to organize elections?
The former President Olusegun Obasanjo did mention something about constitutional amendment to allow young people participate in the political space. And I keep wondering, who is stopping the young people from participating? We've been given the not too young to run bill. But then, the question is, one very, very critical happenstance during the run-up to these elections, we saw some young people groups, whatever they call themselves, coalitions and all of that, coming to buy forms. For candidates. And guess who these candidates were?
The same
the
people.
Old people that they said we don't want. So, how would you address that?
So you brought up the issue, and I'm happy with the example you gave about youth coalition groups being the ones who are gathering money together to pay millions of naira for an establishment old school politician to win an election. Here's what it means. The issue about youth, and I have said this consistently every time I get the opportunity, is not youth as per age. It's not biological age. It is the youth of the mind. You see, so there are many young people in physically young bodies who behave worse than some of the old politicians that we have. Let the truth be said. Those people are not the people that we want under the not too young to run acts. What we have is that there are older people who have the renewed minds, who are young, who are youthful, who are energetic. I am not one of those people who believes that you need to wait for one generation to tell you, okay, we are tired, let us pass it to you. No. The running for political office and governance in Nigeria is available to all Nigerians according to certain age limitations. And we have reduced those ages. So it is not about that. It is rather about the quality of the mind, the youthfulness of that mind. And what I see, and I dare say, many so-called young politicians are not youthful at all in their minds. They are still living in the past. They are still doing things in the way of the old. And one of the analogies I use is the concept of new wine in old skin. There's no such thing. You cannot be new. You cannot say you are new and you are putting yourself in the old wine skin. If you are new, then you must be in the new wine skin. New wine in new wine skin. New ways of thinking from new politicians in new political institutions. That is how we are going to renew the face of Nigeria.
We'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, my guest will be talking more about his foray into politics when we return.
The report where they reach us talk say some
You don't do. I don't tire for all the things where you dey yarn.
people blood done the right.
You dey yarn no pata. Shey you think say na only you fit buga? I go show you.
This matter don't pass, be careful.
You dey show yourself all these years, I just dey look you. This time, you go know the kind of person we are.
I been dey watch as you dey try scatter my future.
The feature wey I dey try
Organize for myself.
small. Na him you dey try kill abi?
Not to kill, scatter, and destroy my paroles always the agenda, abi? Oh, but you know, Fito, not this time.
I don't set my own agenda.
I know how way your agenda go fit pass my agenda.
Because my agenda strong past your agenda.
For this election, the agenda now.
It's our future.
No violence.
Just vote.
Set the agenda for this election. No violence, just vote.
You're welcome back. The program is still Nigeria Today, and my guest has been Omabise Baru. Now, Mr. Baru, you are a politician. Interestingly, you are running for the House of Representatives, representing Amak Buhari constituency under the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party. Let me start from this. What motivated you to? Just what motivated you to enter into this race? To tread where angels even
There. I think that I always tell the story this way, that 20 years after leaving school and working in Nigeria, 20 years I have been blessed. I have seen my life and the lives of others around me. By God's grace, we have made progress. But here's what I've seen, that in those 20 years, the fortunes of my country has continued to dwindle. Our country has become worse. And every time people ask why, the answer is obvious. It has to do with the quality of leaders in our country. So here's what has happened. That forward-thinking people like myself have hitherto stayed away from political enterprise and said, no, it's dirty. Let's leave it for these people. Here's what I realized. If we continue to leave it for these people, our country will continue to get worse. And I don't want to continue to flourish in a country that is getting worse, that is continuously degenerating. So we got together and said, let's get involved. And interestingly, that is the theme of our campaign. That let us stop talking. I have been writing in Nigerian newspapers for the past 6 years, intellectualizing, teaching people, sharing ideas. You know what? I'm fed up. I have decided to get involved because I understand and I believe wholeheartedly that until we have better leaders, political leaders, Kwame Nkrumah said, Seek ye first the political kingdom, and everything will be added to you.
All right. I want to ask, you are from the South, and then you are running to represent a constituency in the Federal Capital Territory, which is also a home for every Nigerian. There are issues and peculiarities with Abuja as it is. The indigenship problem, the settlership problems, the national status of Abuja as a home for every Nigerian. Then how do you intend to take all of this in one stride, having to represent people of Amak Buhari constituency? Because there are still underlying issues about indigenship, settlership, and every other thing. How are you going to tackle that?
Well, there are a number of issues. First of all, when I'm asked this question, I always tell people very quickly that, first of all, the problems of Nigeria, they are not germane to any part of Nigeria. The real problems are not some of these things. The real problems are just poverty, bad education, inadequate social and physical infrastructure. The truth is that if those issues were addressed ab initio, ethnic and sectional nationalism will not be on the front burner. The truth is that our evil politicians use those issues to blindfold and camouflage the people while ensuring that they remain in perpetual poverty. So one of the first things I would like to do is to appeal to everybody to understand what we need is not a sectional leader. What we need is not an ethnic or religious leader. What we need is not a settler or an indigent leader. What we need is a good leader. A good leader that is competent, that has the capacity and understands the needs, the real needs of people. You see, if we lived in a society where everything worked, nobody will ask, where do you come from? A very good analogy to hit the nail for your audience is very simple. Flying an aeroplane is the most dangerous thing a human being can do. When we fly in aeroplanes, do we ever stop at the cockpit and ask, is the person from my side? Is the person my religion? Nobody asks those questions. The question we want to ask, if any, is how competent is the pilot? How many flyer hours does the pilot have? Isn't it? These are the questions Nigerians and the people of Amak and Buhari should be asking. Not whether somebody comes from somewhere. I have lived in Abuja for 23 years. I have built businesses, worked here, paid my taxes, employed over 90 people as we speak today in enterprises that work in Amak and in Buhari. There is no greater sign of commitment to a society than that. You know what I mean? Yes. However, I would use the opportunity of your question to bring up one big issue. One big issue I would like to address as a legislator and to push, in fact, if I get the opportunity by God's grace, will be the first bill I will propose, is to create the mayoralty of Abuja. That is to say, that in the executive, Abuja does not have a leader that represents the people, that is elected by the people in the executive. We have a minister that is appointed by the president. We do not have executive accountability in Abuja. So we have, and that is why you hear in Abuja people talk about, you are running for Senate, you are running for House of Reps, what are you going to do? It's not me that is meant to do something. There is a minister of the FCT. The problem is that the minister of the FCT is not, with due respect, electorally and politically accountable to the people of Abuja because he did not win an election. He was not selected by them. So one of the first issues that will help to ensure that our FCT is on the right track is to push for the mayoralty of Abuja. Let us have an elected mayor of Abuja as quickly as possible. And then we will start to see things. So long as that person is a good person, that person is a competent person, regardless of what state that person comes from. The indigenous people of Abuja, the Koro people, the Gwandara people, the Gbagi people, the Hausa people, and the other nationalities that are here, they are just like every other Nigerian. They have been bruised, they have been battered, they have been raped, and they have been pillaged by a political elite that does not care. And this has nothing to do with whether they are indigents or settlers. Everywhere in Nigeria, the story is the same.
Thank you very much. Now, your party, the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, what really, because you did mention ideology.
Yes.
What would you say is the ideology of the ANRP?
First, just look at the name, Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party. First, we believe in the abundance of Nigeria, that Nigeria has an abundance of resources to take care of every Nigerian, if only we will renew the hearts and minds of Nigerians, and we will work towards fighting our common enemies. You see, many people say that there's no basis for Nigerian unity. No, there is. Charles and all our listeners, there is. And the basis of Nigerian unity is the collective deprivation that we have all suffered. And attacking that collective deprivation is at the core of our agenda, our ideology, and our manifesto at the ANRP. Our motto is 3 things: renewal, renaissance, and respect. That we will work to renew the hearts and minds of Nigerians and renew the face of our country. That we will push for the Nigerian renaissance, that Nigeria has been a great country before, and we are going to make that country even better. And that we will treat our people, we will recognize the dignity of the humanity in Nigeria. That every Nigerian, regardless of his tribe, his creed, his economic or social circumstances, is a human being created by God that should be respected. These are some of the core philosophies around the ANRP.